You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you're consistently treated as an option rather than a priority, it's because somewhere along the way, you silently communicated that this treatment was acceptable. Your desperation to be chosen has made you someone easily replaced. The harsh reality is that we don't value what comes easily. We don't fight for what we believe will always be there. In trying to prove yourself worthy of love through endless accommodation, you've inadvertently proven yourself unworthy of respect. It's time to reverse this pattern. They say the most painful goodbyes are the ones never said and the ones never explained. When someone walks away without warning, they leave behind a void that echoes with questions. Have you ever been that person who walked away? Or perhaps you've been the one left standing in the dust of someone's departure, wondering what went wrong. The truth that many of us struggle to accept is that we often don't recognize the value of what we have until it's gone, until the door closes, until the phone stops ringing, until the empty space beside us grows cold. Today, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge the way you think about your presence in other people's lives. I want to challenge the way you perceive your own worth. Because many of us are walking around completely unaware of the power we hold, the power to be so significant in someone's life that our absence creates unbearable pain. But here's the paradox. To make someone feel the pain of losing you, you must first become someone worth missing. Let me ask you a question that might disturb your comfort. If you disappeared today, who would notice? Who would feel a void that cannot be filled? Who would search for you because life without you seems unimaginable? If your answer leaves you unsettled, then you're exactly where you need to be right now. We live in a world where relationships have become disposable. We swipe right, we swipe left, we connect. We disconnect, we follow. We unfollow. The sacred bond of human connection has been reduced to digital transactions that require minimal investment and even less commitment. And in this world of shallow connections, we've forgotten what it means to be irreplaceable. When I speak about making someone feel the pain of losing you, I'm not advocating for manipulation or games. I'm talking about becoming so authentic, so valuable, so irreplaceable that your absence creates a vacuum that demands to be acknowledged. This isn't about ego. This isn't about control. This is about understanding your intrinsic worth and living in such a way that others can't help but recognize it too. You see, there's a fundamental law of human psychology. We don't value what comes easily. We don't treasure what's always available. We don't fight for what we believe will always be there. The woman who's always available, always accommodating, always waiting, she becomes invisible. The man who never sets boundaries, never stands firm in his values, never expects respect, he becomes forgettable. But the person who knows their worth, the one who brings unique value, the one who stands for something greater than themselves, that person creates a presence so powerful that their absence becomes unbearable. There was once a community garden in a neighborhood where I lived for years. A quiet, elderly gentleman tended to this garden daily. He planted flowers, removed weeds, watered during dry spells. Most people barely noticed him. His work was expected, almost invisible. Then one day, he stopped coming. Weeks passed. The garden began to wither. Weeds grew where flowers once bloomed. The beauty that everyone had taken for granted began to fade. It was only then that the community realized what they had lost. It was only in his absence that they understood his value. They felt the pain of losing him because he had silently created something irreplaceable. This is the essence of what I'm sharing with you today. Not to be like that gardener who works in silent invisibility, but to be like the garden itself, a unique source of beauty and value that transforms its surroundings. How do you become that person? It begins with 3 principles that I want to explore with you today. First, you must discover your unique value. What do you bring to the table that no one else can? What is your gift to the world? What is that unique combination of talents, perspectives, experiences, and wisdom that makes you irreplaceable? Many people go through life never asking these questions. They float through existence, conforming to expectations, fitting into boxes created by others. And in doing so, they render themselves replaceable. The painful truth is this: if you don't know what makes you unique, how can you expect others to see it? If you don't recognize your own value, how can you expect others to value you? Your uniqueness might lie in your compassion, your creativity, your analytical mind, your ability to bring peace to chaotic situations, your talent for making others feel seen and heard. It might be something you've always taken for granted because it comes naturally to you. But I challenge you today to identify it, name it, embrace it, and most importantly, share it with the world unapologetically. The second principle is integrity. Becoming irreplaceable isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent in your values. It's about being the same person in private that you are in public. It's about standing for something so firmly that your presence becomes a testament to what you believe. A person of integrity becomes a landmark in the lives of others. They become a fixed point, a true north. And when they're gone, their absence leaves others disoriented, searching for that steady reference point they've come to rely on. Integrity isn't just about honesty. It's about wholeness. It's about showing up fully in every interaction, every relationship, every situation. It's about bringing your whole self to the table and not fragmenting your identity to please different crowds. When you live with this kind of integrity, you become irreplaceable because authenticity cannot be duplicated. There may be other honest people, other reliable people, other consistent people, but there is no other you living your values in your unique way. The third principle is investment. To become someone worth missing, you must be someone who invests genuinely in others, not for what you can get, but for what you can give. We live in a transactional world where relationships often function like business deals. I give to get. I text to receive a text back. I love to be loved in return. But this approach renders us interchangeable. Just another transaction. True investment means giving without the guarantee of return. It means showing up for people even when it's inconvenient. It means remembering details about their lives that even they might forget. It means creating value in their world that they didn't have to ask for or earn. When you invest in this way, you create a depth of connection that few experience. You become the person they turn to in crisis. Celebrate within joy. Seek out in confusion. You become woven into the fabric of their lives in such a fundamental way that your absence leaves a hole that cannot be easily patched. I once knew a teacher who invested in this way, while other educators focused primarily on curriculum. This teacher remembered every student's birthday, knew their individual struggles, celebrated their unique victories. Years after students left her classroom, they would return. Not just to say hello, but because they felt the void of her absence in their lives. They missed the way she made them feel seen, the way she believed in them when no one else did. That teacher understood something profound. To be missed, you must first be present. Not just physically present, but emotionally present, mentally present, spiritually present. The kind of presence that says, I am here with you fully in this moment. So I ask you again, if you disappeared today, who would feel the void? Who would search for you because no one else sees them the way you do? Who would miss the unique value that only you bring? Let me tell you something that might be difficult to hear. Many of us have become background characters in our own lives. We've settled for being convenient. We've accepted being taken for granted. We've become so accustomed to overextending ourselves for people who wouldn't cross the street for us that we've forgotten what it means to be valued. Your presence should be a gift, not a given. I want you to think about the last time you walked into a room and felt the atmosphere change. Not because you were loud or demanding attention, but because your very essence carries weight. Because you bring something to that space that wasn't there before you arrived. If you can't remember the last time you felt that or worse. If you've never felt that, then it's time to reclaim your personal power. There's a difference between being needed and being valued. When someone needs you, they require what you can provide. When someone values you, they cherish who you are. Too many of us have built relationships on being needed. The reliable friend, the overtime worker, the always available partner without establishing our value. Being needed creates dependency. Being valued creates respect. This is where many relationships break down. The person who is always giving eventually realizes they're depleted. The person who is always accommodating eventually feels invisible. The person who never says no eventually becomes nothing but a convenience. And when that person finally walks away, the other party doesn't feel the pain of losing them. They feel the inconvenience of replacing what they provided. Is that what you want? To be an inconvenience when absent rather than a void that cannot be filled. I'm speaking to those of you who have found yourselves in cycles of underappreciation. Those who have dimmed your light to make others comfortable. Those who have sacrificed your needs on the altar of keeping the peace. Your worth is not measured by how much you endure. Your value is not determined by how much you sacrifice. Your significance is not proven by how little you require in return. Here's the truth that will set you free. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual respect, not on imbalanced devotion. When someone respects you, they honor your boundaries. When someone respects you, they value your time. When someone respects you, they consider your feelings, your needs, your desires as important as their own. And respect cannot be demanded. It must be commanded by how you carry yourself, how you honor your own boundaries, how you respond when those boundaries are tested. I once counseled a woman who had spent 20 years in a relationship where she was constantly giving while receiving scraps of affection in return. She cooked elaborate meals that went unappreciated. She arranged her schedule around his convenience. She suppressed her dreams to support his. She had made herself so available, so accommodating, that she had become invisible. When she finally gathered the courage to step back, to create space, to focus on her own growth, something remarkable happened. For the first time in 2 decades, he noticed her absence. He felt the void where her constant attention had been. He experienced what it meant to lose her presence. It wasn't manipulation that created this awakening. It was authenticity. She had finally honored herself enough to stop accepting less than she deserved. And in doing so, she created the space for him to recognize what he had taken for granted. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give another person is the opportunity to miss you. But this requires courage. The courage to walk away from situations that diminish you. The courage to create boundaries that protect your value. The courage to risk being misunderstood in the short term for being properly valued in the long term. When you remove yourself from places where you're undervalued, one of two things will happen. Either the other person will feel the pain of your absence and recognize your worth, or they won't. And in that case, you've gained the priceless knowledge that you were investing in someone who couldn't see your value. Either outcome serves your growth. Either outcome honors your worth. Let's talk about something that many motivational speeches avoid, the reality that not everyone will value you. No matter how exceptional you are, not everyone will feel the pain of losing you, no matter how much you've given. And that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity. Some people have a limited capacity for appreciation. Some people have a limited capacity for depth. Some people have a limited capacity for seeing beyond their own needs. No amount of value you provide will expand that capacity if they're not willing to grow. What does this mean for you? It means being selective about where you invest your energy. It means recognizing that your time, your attention, your presence is precious, and not everyone has earned access to it. When you become selective, you become valuable. When you become discerning about who receives your energy, you elevate your worth. When you stop being available to those who don't appreciate you, you become irreplaceable to those who do. This isn't about playing games or creating artificial scarcity. This is about honoring the limited resource that is your life force. Your creativity, your love, your attention. Think about the most respected people in your life. Are they the ones who are always available? Always saying yes, always accommodating? Or are they the ones who have clear boundaries, who value their time, who bring something unique to every interaction? I've observed that the people who command the most respect are often the ones who are the most selective about where they invest themselves. They don't try to be everything to everyone. They don't dilute their essence to fit in. They don't compromise their standards to be accepted. Instead, they offer their authentic selves, nothing more, nothing less. And in doing so, they create relationships based on mutual respect rather than utility. This is the foundation of becoming someone whose absence creates pain. Not because you're manipulative or withholding, but because you're authentic and valuable. I want you to consider something. The space you occupy in someone's life is proportional to the value you bring to it. If you occupy a small space, it's because you've accepted a small role. If your absence would barely be felt, it's because your presence hasn't been fully expressed. It's time to expand. It's time to bring your full self to every relationship that matters. It's time to stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start growing to make yourself whole. The greatest pain isn't always found in what we lose, but in what we realize we never truly had. How many of you have given years to relationships where you were an option rather than a priority? How many have poured your heart and soul into connections where the other person was merely passing time with you? That realization cuts deeper than any knife. It creates a wound that time alone cannot heal. But what if I told you that this pain you've experienced can become your greatest teacher? What if the very moments that broke you can become the foundation for rebuilding yourself into someone who will never be taken for granted again? There's a transformation that happens when you stop begging for scraps of attention and start commanding the respect you deserve. It's not an overnight change. It's a gradual reclamation of your power, your dignity, your self-worth. This transformation begins with a simple but profound shift. You must become complete within yourself. We've been fed the romantic notion that we need another person to complete us, that we're somehow half beings wandering around looking for our missing piece. This dangerous myth has led countless souls to tolerate disrespect, to accept crumbs, to stay in situations that diminish them, all because they believe they need the other person more than they need their own dignity. The truth is both simpler and more challenging. No one can complete you, because you were never incomplete to begin with. Your value doesn't increase when someone chooses you. Your worth doesn't diminish when someone leaves you. Who you are, your essence, your soul, your unique contribution to this world remains constant regardless of who recognizes it. When you truly understand this, something remarkable happens. You stop approaching relationships from a place of lack and start engaging from a place of fullness. You stop trying to prove your worth and simply embody it. You stop fearing abandonment because you know that no one's departure can take away who you are. And paradoxically, this is precisely when you become someone who cannot be easily replaced. This is when your absence creates a void that cannot be filled by another. Because complete people, those who know their worth, who have done their inner work, who bring their authentic selves to every interaction, are rare in a world full of individuals seeking external validation. There was a young man who spent years trying to earn the approval of his father. He changed his career path, altered his appearance, suppressed his natural personality, all to fit the mold of what he thought his father wanted. Despite these sacrifices, the approval never came. The relationship remained distant, conditional, unsatisfying. It was only when this young man stopped seeking his father's validation and began living authentically that something shifted. He pursued his true passions. He expressed his genuine opinions. He stood firm in his values even when they conflicted with his father's expectations. At first, this created more distance. His father was accustomed to control, to compliance. But as time passed, something unexpected occurred. His father began to truly see him perhaps for the first time. Not as an extension of himself, but as a complete, self-actualized individual worthy of respect. The relationship transformed not because the son finally became what his father wanted, but because he became so fully himself that his authenticity commanded respect. This is the paradox at the heart of what I'm sharing with you today. To be irreplaceable in someone's life, you must first be willing to walk away from anyone who treats you as replaceable. This requires a level of self-trust that many of us struggle to develop. It requires faith that your worth will be recognized by those who have the capacity to see it. It requires patience as you filter through relationships that don't serve your growth to find those that do. But most of all, it requires a commitment to yourself that supersedes your desire for any particular relationship. Can you make that commitment today? Can you promise yourself that you will no longer shrink to accommodate those who can't appreciate your full stature? Can you vow to stop silencing your truth to make others comfortable with their illusions? These aren't just rhetorical questions. These are invitations to make a fundamental choice about how you will exist in the world from this moment forward. Because when you choose yourself, when you honor your own boundaries, when you respect your own time, when you validate your own feelings, you teach others how to treat you. You establish the minimum standard for what you will accept. And those who cannot meet that standard will fall away. They will find your boundaries inconvenient. They will call your self-respect selfish. They will label your standards unrealistic. Let them. Their resistance is simply evidence that they benefited from your previous lack of boundaries. Their discomfort is proof that they preferred you when you were smaller, when you required less, when you accepted less. As these people fall away, you create space for connections with those who recognize your worth without you having to diminish yourself. Those who respect your boundaries without you having to enforce them repeatedly. Those who value your authentic expression without you having to filter it for their comfort. These are the relationships worth cultivating. These are the connections that will flourish when watered with mutual respect. These are the bonds that will withstand the test of time because they're built on the solid foundation of seeing and honoring each other's intrinsic value. The law of contrast is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. We don't recognize light without darkness. We don't appreciate warmth without cold. We don't value presence until we experience absence. This is why your absence creates such a powerful opportunity for awakening in the lives of those who have taken you for granted. When you remove yourself from a situation where you've been undervalued, you create the contrast necessary for your value to be truly seen. But this isn't about playing games or manufacturing artificial distance. This is about genuine self-respect that refuses to remain where it isn't honored. Let me be clear, walking away isn't about punishing the other person. It's about protecting yourself. It's not a manipulative tactic designed to inflict pain. It's a necessary boundary that prevents you from continuing to accept pain. The distinction is crucial because your intention determines whether this becomes an act of self-love or an act of retaliation. One heals. The other wounds, one elevates. The other diminishes. When you walk away with dignity, not with dramatic ultimatums or scorched earth tactics, but with quiet self-respect, you leave the door open for genuine transformation, both within yourself and, potentially, within the relationship. There's a sacredness to absence that we rarely discuss when used consciously. Absence creates space for reflection, for realization, for the truth to emerge unobscured by constant interaction. In the silence that follows your departure, unspoken truths often find their voice. In the void left by your absence, unacknowledged value often becomes glaringly apparent. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone who doesn't value you is to remove yourself so completely that they have no choice but to face the reality of life without you. This creates the opportunity for genuine appreciation. Not the superficial kind that comes from fear of loss, but the profound kind that comes from actual experience of loss. Because the truth is, some people cannot recognize the water until the well runs dry. I've seen relationships completely transform after a period of conscious separation. Not because either party played games, but because the separation created the space for genuine realization. The space for questions like, what did I take for granted? What did I fail to appreciate? What would I do differently if given another chance? These realizations cannot be forced. They cannot be manufactured through manipulation or ultimatums. They can only emerge organically in the silence that follows your dignified exit. Which brings me to perhaps the most challenging truth of all. You must be willing to lose the relationship completely. You must be willing to walk away without the guarantee of return. You must be prepared for the possibility that your absence will not be painful enough to catalyze change. And you must be at peace with this possibility. Because the ultimate measure of your self-worth isn't whether someone else recognizes your value. It's whether you recognize it yourself. Set. If you leave to manipulate someone into changing, you're still placing your worth in their hands. If you create distance with the expectation of pursuit, you're still seeking external validation. If you walk away while constantly looking over your shoulder for signs of their suffering, you haven't truly walked away at all. True self-worth requires that you value yourself regardless of whether anyone else does. It demands that you honor your boundaries even when doing so might mean permanent loss. It insists that you choose your dignity over your desire for any particular outcome. This is where most people falter. They start the journey of reclaiming their worth. But when faced with potential permanent loss, they retreat. They accept less than they deserve. They rationalize disrespect. They convince themselves that partial attention is better than none at all. And in doing so, they surrender the very power they were beginning to reclaim. Don't let this be your story. Don't let your fear of loss overpower your need for respect. Don't let your desire for a particular relationship blind you to what that relationship is actually providing. Because when you truly value yourself, you understand that no relationship is worth the sacrifice of your dignity. No connection justifies the diminishment of your spirit. No bond warrants the abandonment of your boundaries. As we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with this final truth. Making someone feel the pain of losing you isn't about inflicting suffering. It's about living so authentically, so purposefully, so aligned with your highest self that your absence creates an unmistakable void. A void that speaks louder than any words you could say. A void that teaches more powerfully than any lesson you could deliver. A void that awakens consciousness in a way that your continued presence never could. This is the ultimate paradox. Your greatest influence often comes not from what you do, but from what you refuse to do. Not from where you are present, but from where you choose to be absent. When you refuse to remain in situations that diminish you, you make a powerful statement about your worth that cannot be ignored. When you decline to participate in dynamics that devalue you, you create a disruption that demands attention. When you withdraw your energy from people who don't appreciate it, you create the space for that appreciation to either develop or for you to redirect that energy where it will be honored. And in this process, you don't just change how others see you. You transform how you see yourself. Because each time you honor your boundaries, you build trust with yourself. Each time you refuse to accept less than you deserve, you strengthen your self-respect. Each time you walk away from what diminishes you, you walk toward what will elevate you. This is how you become unshakable in your worth. Not by demanding recognition from others, but by consistently recognizing yourself. So I challenge you today, stop making yourself small to fit into places you've outgrown. Stop silencing your truth to maintain relationships built on illusions. Stop accepting crumbs when you deserve the whole feast. Have the courage to walk away. Have the strength to stay away until your worth is recognized. Have the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the pain of your absence, the pain that awakens them to what they failed to see when you were present. Your absence will not break what is meant to be rebuilt. It will only break what was already broken, but hidden behind your constant accommodation. Trust this process. Trust yourself. And know that whatever comes after your dignified exit, whether reconciliation or permanent separation, it will honor your worth in a way that your continued tolerance of disrespect never could.